Okay. So we have two people here, Yogita. Good evening, everyone. Should we start the class? Though there are only two people I can see, but let us start it, right?
Good evening, ma'am.
Yeah, because it's already 4, so let me start. So what I'm going to do today is that our MGS-01, in which I think we were left with the last two units, so we'll just go through them quickly. And then, I mean, from today, we are supposed to start MGS-002. All right. So we will just finish the first paper. I mean, there are two units, as I said. We'll quickly go, and then we will start the next one, which is MGS-002, and let us see if we can finish off the first uh, paper out of it. Okay, the first unit, that is right. So what we were left with when we were doing our MGSE 001, MGS 001 was the gender, occupational safety and health. Okay, this was one of the unit that we were supposed to do. And yeah, good evening, Nalini. Good evening, Shrisha. So I just started right now. Okay.
Good evening.
Yeah, and then we have to just discuss a little bit about the gender rights and so reproductive rights and reproductive health. Okay, now for this particular session unit, that is gender, occupational health, and safety and health. Now, we all know that when it comes to any kind of occupation, right, we know that there is always a problem or always a fear that there are certain occupational hazards, okay, that are involved with in occupations. Okay, in most occupations, some kind of risks are there. Health risks. Sometimes there are certain hazards that might take place. So how is gender included in the concept of the health, the safety, that the safety measures that should be taken by the companies, by the industries, the kind of employment. Like, for example, we know that there are a lot of risks when it comes to working in mines. Okay, then any kind of mine for that matter. And there are risks related to the aviation industry. Okay, the pilots and the crew member, they had to face, they always take that risk. The risk, some of the places or some of the organization or some kind of work might actually have a higher risk as compared to the other occupations. So what this unit basically deals with is that whether the gender perspective has been taken while we have policies regarding occupational safety, occupational health issues. So do we take gender, do we include gender in it? Because in many a times it is thought that the male workers are at higher risk. Why? Because they are generally people who they are doing some kind of a dangerous work. In factories, they are probably given work which includes more risk. Maybe working with machineries, working with crane, So there anything if anything goes wrong, they are at the they are the one who will be facing the risk. There are times when we also consider that most of the women's work, because we know that we society decides what are women's work and what is a men's work. So most of the women work are very safe, and therefore the risk factor is not there. Then there are no occupational hazards, so it is easier for them to work. Okay, so but then it has been there has been a lot of discussion on it, and there have been a lot of debates on it, and it was realized that many work, even when women are doing, there are a lot of health issues that might arise, just as when the men are involved in some kind of a in some occupation, there are health issues and there are occupational hazards that they have to face. Yes, Sumit, you want to say something? First of all, I think I'm seeing Sumit for the first time, so welcome.
थैंक यू मैडम। मैं ये पूछना चाह रहा था कि कोई ग्रुप है क्या अपना ये रिगार्डिंग
हाँ जी।
कोई ग्रुप है अपना व्हाट्सएप का इवेंट मैनेजमेंट वालों का?
हाँ, आप कुछ पूछना चाहते थे क्या? आप थोड़ा क्लैरिटी से बोलें।
मैडम मैं पूछ रहा हूँ कि जो इवेंट मैनेजमेंट वाले हैं स्टूडेंट, इनका कोई व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप है क्या?
आप हाँ पूछिए।
मैडम ये जो
दूसरी
अपना
क्लास में
इवेंट मैनेजमेंट
दूसरी
का
क्लास
कोर्स है, इसका
तो
कोई व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप है क्या?
हाँ, अभी कुछ बता रहा है कोई। हाँ, एक मिनट। हाँ,
चैट
हेलो।
बॉक्स में लिंक दिया, उसमें ज्वाइन करो। ईपीएमटी के लिए चैट बॉक्स में लिंक दिया, उसको ज्वाइन करिए। चैट बॉक्स में एक बार चेक करिए।
ओके। या सुमित, आपको जवाब मिल गया होगा, आपको बता दिया गया है जो भी आप पूछ रहे थे, है ना? Okay. Right. So let us continue with what we were doing. Right. So in this unit, that is what we are going to talk about. Okay. Now, it has been observed that more than 2 million people, generally, most of almost every year, more than 200 million people die of occupational accidents or work related disease, right? So it is very important that when we see so much of deaths taking place, then it is important that we must try and do something about including everybody who is involved in job or in labor force, uh, so that we can make a proper policy for that. Okay, now what exactly is occupational health? Occupational health is like if you are working in a particular organization or any industry, the whatever is your environment, does it have an impact on your health? Like for example, if you're working in a chemical industry, then most of the chemical industries, the chemical industries are always some, if there is some kind of a leakage that has in the chemicals, then it might be hazardous for people. There is also a possibility
मैम
that
एक मिनट रुकिएगा मैम, लास्ट ईयर
हाँ
मैम, एक
जी
मिनट। हाँ,
बोलिएगा।
सुमित हुड्डा, सुमित हुड्डा,
हाँ जी
एक मिनट रुकिएगा।
सुमित हुड्डा,
सुमित हुड्डा,
आप कुछ पूछ रहे हैं, क्या पूछ रहे हैं?
हाँ जी सर।
आप दूसरी क्लास ज्वाइन करो, दूसरी क्लास जो
अच्छा
लिंक दे रखे ना चैट बॉक्स में, उसको ज्वाइन करो।
ठीक है सर।
ओके।
कंटिन्यू करिए।
Yeah, all right. So if there is a chemical that is lying even unused, I don't know how many of you are aware of the Bhopal gas tragedy. Okay, I don't know if you have heard about it also or not. It has been one of the worst, disaster that that was there or that happened in Bhopal. in the month of December, so many years back. It is now more than 20-25 years. Now, what has happened in this is that there was this one factory which was primarily closed, and there was a very lethal, chemical that was lying there for years. And unfortunately, it was an American company, and nothing was done, to uh, just yes, yes, Nalini, what are you saying?
Ma'am, I'm not saying anything. I got disconnected, so I've just logged in.
Acha, okay, okay, all right.
Thank you.
Okay, right. So it was lying there, and something happened. Something went wrong in the, in that drum or in that cylinder which was carrying this, which was having this gas. And there was one day in the middle of the night at around 2 o'clock, it started, leaking from that cylinder. And the gas is was methyl isocyanide, and it's a very poisonous, very dangerous gas. And I was there in Bhopal at that time, though our house was quite far away from the from this industry, so we were not directly affected, but there were a lot of people. It just, it entered the air, and then finally people died, almost like, when you spray a fleet, on ants, the way they die, people actually died like that. There were thousands and thousands of people who have died. Okay. People, and especially who were the one who were mostly affected, people who were living in, in on the streets. There were a lot of people. We know that in our country, because of poverty, people don't have house, and they spend their night outside. So they were the one. There were people who were living in houses which did not have proper ventilation, and somehow, gas started leaking in. And of course, there was a panic, and some people started running. Obviously, the moment you start running, you start inhaling more, and the more they inhaled, they, fell unconscious and they died. So this was a very big tragedy that has happened. So these are, the industrial concerns that one needs to think about. Okay. So what is, the scope of occupational hazards, and the system through which occupational safety and hazards must be taken care of. Okay. So uh, a few things that needs to be, you know taken into consideration is the promotion and maintenance of the highest degree of physical, mental, and social well-being of the workers. It's the responsibility of the industry or that organization to make sure that their people are safe. The prevention among the workers of adverse effect on health. Okay. If the working conditions are going to have an adverse effect, some kind of precautions and, prevention steps must be taken. The protection of workers in their employment, obviously, from any kind of risk. The placing and maintenance of workers in an occupation, it is also the responsibility of the organization to make sure that the people, the workers health, are taken care of. And many of the industries, many of good organization, it is one of their good practices to get their, employees medical checkup. Every year, many big organizations, they make sure that the health checkup, or as we know that body checkup is done every year, all the tests and everything, and it is the responsibility that the organization takes. Okay. And it is important that we must understand that every organization, it's an organization where human beings are working, right? We are not working with robots only, we are not working with machines only. So it is important that these, your people should be taken care of. Now, what is the difference between hazard and risk? Hazards are generally, as I told you, it is defined as a substance or an agent, or any kind of physical situation, okay, with a potential to cause uh, an effect, okay. And the best example is, some harmful chemicals, okay, which are not being used, okay. It could be any kind of, and let's say an uncovered hole, there was some digging that was done, and that hole had remained uncovered, so there is a possibility that somebody might, fall down. So that has to be taken care of, okay. These are the examples of chemical and, physical hazards. The risk, as far as it is concerned, it expresses the likelihood of an event to occur and its severity, okay. So it is something like that when we are working in this place, it may or may not happen. Like, for example, the risk factor in the aviation industry, okay, the risk that people have when they are in any of the defense services, okay. Drivers, right, they are driving day and night. The truck drivers, they are going they drive overnight. So sometimes, they have a different kind of uh, danger, and that is known as risk, okay. Against both, what needs to be done, right? Reasons for, what are the main basic reasons for establishing some kind of safety measures? So it is obviously that it is first and foremost, it is the ethics, right? There is an ethical responsibility of the employers to make sure that the employee, should not face uh, the risk or the hazard. So it is important, their health is important. So that is an ethical, there is an ethical reason. It is also an economic reason. Now, why is it an economic reason? Is because that if a person is working in your in any industry or in any organization, if something happens to them, then it will be the responsibility of the organization or the industry to pay for it, isn't it? So there is an insurance, right? And insurance, the more insurance you have to pay, obviously it is an economic issue as far as companies are concerned. So it is always better, to have a precaution and prevention rather than, waiting for that it to happen and then think as to how you're going to pay the the compensations and the insurance. So that has is also, that also needs to be understood. And also, of course, there is an legal side of it also, that occupational safety and health requirement, maybe, it's a civil law, right? It can also become a criminal law. If somebody dies and then, compensation is not paid, then, it can actually become a criminal offense. So the legal aspect, the ethical aspect, and the economic aspect, both uh, makes it important for organizations to make sure that they have some kind of good practices in their uh, organization as relates to health and safety, okay. Now, whether gender is there or not, so what happens is that generally women are men and men are exposed to different kind of hazards, okay. As I told you that initially, when there was an idea, or when the society has an idea that the work women are doing are mostly within the home, and therefore they are not exposed to that kind of risk. Men, because they go out, and therefore they are exposed to higher risks. Well, things have changed, as we all know. Women are equally going out, they are working in different kinds of organization. But it is also possible that even when they are working at home, there are risks, there are occupational hazards when we work at home also, okay. So in one way or the other, there are different ways through which both men and women are exposed to hazards and risks, okay. Now, we all know, because the sexual division of labor, we make sure that women work in in a certain and a specific way, right? Even in organizations, even in industries, there are certain kind of work which is given to women, and there are certain kind of work which is given to men. So while women are working, what kind of risks or hazards they might be facing? So women's job, sometimes become very very monotonous. Okay, they are given a very small part of a job and they are constantly repeating that job again and again, right? So when you do the same job continuously for hours and then for months and years, it becomes very very monotonous. Okay, it also becomes very repetitive, and when you constantly repeat a thing again and again, it can also have a very bad impact on your physical and your mental health. Okay, then what kind of spaces, what kind of equipment are women using, right? Whether they are having a proper or good effect on them or not, that has to be also taken into consideration. Then occupational segregation sometimes increases both the health issues for both men and women by as I said, dividing the work into small segment. As I told you that we adopt division of labor. And I'm not talking about only gender division of labor, but normally also in organizations you have division of labor. Now when you have division of labor, in one way it is economically might be beneficial, as I told you that it helps you to increase your production, right? It also makes people who are doing smaller jobs more efficient in their work. So these are the benefits, but at the same time there are certain disadvantages also, and that disadvantage is, as I said, it becomes very repetitive and very monotonous. Okay, there are watch industries in which the I don't know if you have ever observed or ever seen any kind of documentary, but I was watching one documentary where there was a long table, and there were about 10 people sitting there, and there is a kind of a belt which moves from one person, then it the I mean, on that belt there is the case of the watch is kept, and every person has to uh, do their work by putting maybe let's say there is this one person who is just responsible to put in the dial. Okay, there is this one person who would be just putting uh, the minute arm, okay, an hour arm. Okay, so everyone is doing that, their job, and finally at the end of the table the final watch will be created. Now can you imagine that a single person for hours, for months, they are just putting the dial, and he or she is not doing anything else in the watch. Then it moves to the next person who will just put one of the arm, maybe the arm which shows the minute. Then it will move to the entire belt will shift, and that product will move to the next person who will just put the dial, I mean, one of the arms, another arm, right? The seconds arm or the hours arm, and it is happening. Okay, imagine how monotonous it could be that you are sitting there in one place for so much of time and just doing one single work, isn't it? You have to be careful, because if it moves to the next table, then you will not be able to do your own work. So you can't even divert your attention by maybe talking to another or that kind of a thing. Okay, so these are the hazards of having division of labor. And it is not just that it impacts women, it can impact obviously the men also, because watch factories would have both the kind of workers. So the repetition and monotony, you know, work also becomes very difficult. Then discrimination against women. If any of the organization is discriminating against women, it itself is going to affect by creating a lot of stress for that person. If I'm not happy about the discrimination, obviously I'm stressed out. I'm not being treated properly as a woman, employ, so it will be very stressful for me, so that will also create a problem, right? Part-time workers who are uh, sometimes completely excluded from any kind of health benefit. So if I'm a part-time worker in an organization, I will not be given uh, any medical benefits, right? So that also is not fair on part of the person who is working. Okay, then there are a lot of unpaid work that the women does, isn't it? Like, for example, working in home, right? Working in the family land, okay, producing food for daily consumption, right? Stitching garments or something for their own family members. So cooking, obviously, cooking, washing, cleaning. So all these kind of thing will also in the long term create can create some kind of a physical and mental uh, uh, you know uh, health issues as far as a women is concerned. When you work and do not get any kind of appreciation, any kind of money, obviously because it is unpaid, you're also not getting any kind of recognition of your work. Okay, that in the long term creates uh, a lot of frustration among women. There have been a lot of cases in which uh, a lady who was taking care of the entire household and has never been given any credit, has ended up in uh, you know a, s- a situation where she has been mentally ill, okay, because of lack of appreciation. So all keeping all these things into mind, it is always important that we any kind of organization or any work culture should not ignore the gender perspective. Okay, so be it men or women, we have to understand as to the way the occupation is going to have impact on the male employees and on the female employees. Depending on that, the policy should be made. Okay, it is important that the gender participation, both men and women, should be participating in the policy making so that they can put up their own issues and that can be handled. Okay, sometimes any kind of solution that was found, if it is done from the perspective of one gender and not including the other gender, it will have a very different impact. So it is important to mainstream the gender and to find out how a policy should be made. And it is possible that you might have to have two different policies, one for the men and one for the women, because as I told you, every every job will have different kind of impact on men and women. Okay, so uh, that you have to study. There are certain issues one has to take care of. That occupational health is related to the biological structure also, okay, the psychological structure and the social differences. Okay, biologically men and women are differently built. Okay, obviously because of that there will be the workload will be different, will fall differently on women and on men. Okay, physically uh, women are sometimes not they can take load which is 50% less than the men. Okay, because of the physical structure, the body structure, the height, okay, the muscle build. So these are different for them, that has to be taken care of. Okay, men have a different way of I mean women have certain other issues, like the menstruation time. Okay, when they are pregnant, they need to be they have to have a different way of living. They have to walk in a different way, they will find it difficult to do some work. So that has to be taken into consideration, right? Sometimes the policymaker, if they do not take these into consideration, the policy for health that they will make will have a different impact. Okay. So all these specific problems, the psychological problem, women, as I told you, sometimes they are always, they have to face a double burden. Okay, they have to face they have to work at home also, take care of the family, children, and they are working in an organization also. So because of the double burden, because of the psychological stress that they are going to face, uh, that also needs to be uh, considered. Okay, so what kind of leave pattern, what kind of timings that needs to be fixed, all these things needs to be properly understood. Okay, right. And similarly, there might be some specific problems of men as well. Okay, so that also needs to be taken care of. In many of the cases, when we are talking about reproductive rights and reproductive health, men's reproductive health is not considered very important. Okay, it is the women's reproduct, because women are the one who are going to carry the child. So sometimes it is more important, or considered more important for them. But there have been many occupations which have shown that because of the occupational, because of the chemicals that are being used there, because of all these, the men's reproductive health has been also negatively affected. So all these things need to be taken into consideration, and it's important to make sure that these are properly addressed. Okay, then action needs to be taken. So what are the actions? That first action is that a gender sensitive approach. As I said, I'm talking about gender sensitive, implies both men and women. Okay, so whichever policy risk assessment is being done, it should be done with a gender sensitive approach, right? Gender sensitive approach should also be made an important condition um, in the making up of policies, and any action that has to be taken. Participation of women also is important when we are planning or making the uh, policies. Okay, the National Ministry of Labor is responsible, for all these things, and they have to be uh, properly sensitized. Okay, uh, so that is how that is all about this unit. Then we come to the productive rights, reproductive rights, and reproductive health. Okay, now what exactly is reproductive rights? Reproductive rights is basically the rights of a person, of a woman, primarily because uh, she is the one uh, who is going to reproduce. Okay, so what kind of rights should be there for the women? It also includes certain rights for the men. So actually, as a couple, the women and the man and the women who are going to go into the reproduction must be given certain rights. Okay, rights to decide when they would want a child. Okay, when they do not want a child, if there is a child which is unwanted, they should be able to take a decision. Okay, about it. If an abortion needs to be done, then they should have an access, the women should have an access to safe abortion and all the medical care that is required. uh, uh, the couple should have an access to uh, you know uh, the when the mother is giving birth to the child, safe medical uh, help. Okay, trained medical help, it is very very important. In cities, some and towns, and metros, this may not be a very big issue, because hospitals and medical care centers are very commonly available. We have multi-speciality hospitals and different kind of hospitals. And if you are in economically fine, then one may not be facing a major issue. But these kind of problems happens especially in villages, remote areas. Some of the villages, many a times the healthcare centers are not very well equipped to handle situations. And if there is a complication in the in pregnancy, then it becomes very difficult if you don't have a trained person for it, or maybe a proper well equipped operation theater or something. Then it becomes a difficult task for them. Also, it becomes very difficult for those who are very poor. Okay. Hospitals and medical things are very very expensive, right? Government hospitals sometimes are not very well equipped. Now, because of these situations, the poor person would face a problem, right? So it is important to understand that irrespective of a person's economic condition, or a person, or where that person is, it is reproductive right is actually a legal right, for the couple, and definitely for the women, that she should be able to have access to all these things. Okay. So that is what reproductive right is all about. There has been a lot of discussion initially. Reproduction is actually a very private thing, but reproduction has always become a something which is very public. Why? Because it is the government's policy, on child, on family planning, that have an impact uh, on the women's decision to have a child or not to have a child. Okay. China, when it was focusing on one child norm, and they were saying that if you go for a second child, you will not be given increment in your government job, and there will be a problem of getting the ration cards made, because we all know that China was primarily, it is a communist economy. So there was a lot of discussion on that. And I was reading an article in one of the books in Reader Digest, and they were saying that because even in China they have a lot of stress to uh, have a male child in the family. Sometimes it has happened that a lot of women, when they give birth to a second girl child, then they give away the child to or in some organization, NGO or something, or sometimes just leave her. Okay. Because they want that the other child should be a male, when they had a two child norm. And that has resulted uh, in a huge number of girl child, babies, infants, uh, just kind of uh, discarded or thrown away. So that was a situation, that had occurred in China because of the government's policy on reproduction, government's policy on population control, right? uh, Whether it is a good thing or a bad thing is something else, but then the feminists always say that having a child or not having a child should be the decision of a woman. Okay. Because she is the one who is going to bear the child. So therefore the government is not supposed to decide as to how, when, how many, that should not be the government's decision. But then of course there are certain policies that needs to be implemented. Okay. And but yeah, you cannot enforce something or force people to do it, but then policies are made, right? So in a democratic country you cannot force, right? In a totalitarian country, maybe you can force, or in an authoritarian place you can do it, but not in a democratic country. But at least, but in this but otherwise also, as I said, the reproductive rights are for both men and women, and mainly they should be able to access the medical care, the basic health services. Okay. All these things need to be provided. Okay, so when it comes to reproductive health, well, reproductive health is actually defined as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. Okay, so it is not just that there is an absence of disease and therefore a person is healthy. No, reproductive health is about the mental health also, right? It is also about the physical health, definitely, and it is a social well-being. How the person is uh, behaving in the society, how the person is mentally capable of having a child or not. So all these things are to be taken care of. Okay, and reproductive approach advocates a certain things, a few things, that the contraceptive services should be a part of wider package of reproductive health, right? Abortion services should be provided. Okay, quality of care while providing the health services, it is important, not just providing services, what kind of quality of services are being provided. And that's the reason, why I told you that in remote areas or in villages, the birth of a child can actually have a very high risk, and therefore we have high infant mortality rate, because the services provided there are not sometimes very up to mark, right? And that's the reason why uh, infants lose their life, and of course maternal rate also goes very high. Okay, then that needs to be there. Prevention and screening of women's cancer, right? Women are very prone to cancer, like the cancer, breast cancers are very common. Then cancer in the uterus is becoming very common. So it needs to be very strongly taken care. Women needs to be you know uh, needs to be made to understand what is very important. There are times when the cancer, because there are certain checks that the women needs to do and they don't do it, by the time the cancer is detected, it is already in the third or the fourth stage, and then it becomes very difficult for the women to survive. So the women mm, uh, has to be sensitized about it. Okay, and more and more health issues, and these to be it's to be it has to be discussed. Okay, very openly discussed among the people, right? So that is very important. So these are areas where the women, the reproductive health and reproductive health services and reproductive uh, rights come uh, under consideration. It is also decided that, and India has already done it, that uh, the the population policy and the reproductive health should not be merged. They are two different things. Okay, population, or controlling the population, they can have one policy, right? So but the health needs to be taken differently, and it should be the mother's health as well as the child's health that has to be put together. Because when a child is born, it is the mother and the child, they need special attention, they need special care. A new life has come into existence, so that has to be it should be an inclusive program, and that is how it should be seen. Okay, so these are the things, please go through it. If there is anything that you want to discuss, just let me know. You can send me the questions that you want to discuss on the WhatsApp, and then I can go through it, and then we can see what can be done. Okay, so with that, the MGS-001 is done. Okay, I know we have to go a little faster because of the less number of classes, but then that's okay. I'm just giving you an overview, and then you can go through it. Right? You all are now senior students, and you're doing your post graduation, so all of you are already aware of how you're going to prepare, right? Next one is, in this one is your next paper is MGS-002, and that is gender development goals and praxis. Okay, so in this, the first book that you are supposed to do, or which is basically the first block, it deals with the development. What are the issues, what are the facets? Okay, so here we talk about integrated sustainable development goals. Okay, we will talk about education development goals and upgradation of skill, then enhancing economic resources, and the SHG movement. I have told you SHG, the self-help group. It's a very, very important thing that is happening, and there is a complete movement of that. Then we have the self-help group, microcredit, livelihood, an overview on that, and we also discuss about the regulatory framework. Okay, so in this particular paper there are actually four blocks, right? So we will start with the first block, because we have had to complete the previous one, may not be able to complete this one block, but that's okay. We have four blocks and we have 5 days. I'm sure we will be able to manage. Okay, so the first point is integrated sustainable goals. Okay, now what exactly is this? We have to understand that what is the concept of, uh, international uh, and global development. Okay, one is the development of a country, development of an economy. The other one is how all these things are connected to the international field. Okay, so what is the concept of global development, right? And how an holistic human development uh, is talked about or is discussed. Okay, we have to understand that the development of a if you want a better quality of human life, okay, it is important that development is discussed on a global platform. Okay, and when we are talking about global development, right, we talk about the foreign aid, we talk about governance, we talk about education, we talk about the gender equality, right? We also need to discuss about how we should be prepared for the various kind of disasters that we might be facing, economies, the infrastructure that is there. So on a global platform, it is all these things come under consideration. Okay, international development is always different uh, from the uh, national level development, right? Because obviously it's a wider thing, and we have to understand that. Now the concept of international development, international collaboration, all these came after the Second World War. Okay, till the Second World War, every country, every economy was developing their own uh, uh, country in one way or the other. There was a lot of colonialism, as you know, that Europe was colonizing lot of third world nations. India was also at that time under the British rule. So there was a lot of exploitation that was taking place, isn't it? Exploitation in case of even in India, as I told you, when the Britishers were here, their main aim was to exploit the resources and the exploit the labor of India, and taking the advantage to Britain. Okay, so our own local industries were completely destroyed, right? So all these things were happening when the Second World War took place. The entire world was in war, and there was this Hiroshima attack, and there was a lot of criticism about it. So that was the time when it was realized that war will not really do anything good. So the entire world needs to come together and develop. Okay, so that is the time when uh, the concept of international development, the concept of international organization, most of the international organizations starting from UN to ILO to the WTO, everything came later. Okay, after 19 45, the international conventions, the international all sorts of treaties. Okay, whether it is a treaty on international trade or the treaties on international uh, patency right, everything slowly came into existence. Okay, so international development organizations, they are responsible to implement the plans. Okay, implement or find long term solutions for the underdeveloped countries, right? So they and that is the reason why the United Nations decided to have different kinds of conventions. Okay, conventions, conferences that were held. Various problems, as local, I mean, like national issues as well as international issues, they were all kind of considered. Okay, and discussions and debate were made on that. And very recently, the focus was also on the women issues, right? So that is how the uh, you know uh, international development was thought about. Now, the United Nations also started giving special reference and special importance to the women. Okay, so what was the UN's action, the UN action for women? Okay, so the UN action for the advancement of women, they have very clear, sir, some very clear direction. One is promotion of legal measures. Okay, so promotion of legal rights was also something that the first thing that UN wanted to make sure, right? Make sure that all the treaties and all the bills that were passed were based on women rights. Okay, then all the parties who will ratify the conventions must follow also. Okay, so ratify the convention and then finally become the signatory also. So their country will have to follow the international the laws. Okay, the rules, the legal rights, right? Next is mobilization of public opinion and international action. So it was also important for them to mobilize the people of the world, right? Before Second World War, before the UN actually came into existence, and before and up, when the UN decided to bring women issues into the onto the international platform, it was important that the countries around the world should also mobilize themselves. Okay, so they should come together and discuss the issues that are of importance. Okay, so, and of course, research and training, more and more research, data collection. Okay, to figure out where the problem lies most, that has to be done, and accordingly training should be given, right? So training should be imparted wherever it is necessary. So NGOs, they can come forward. The policy makers of different countries, the countries which are facing major challenges related to women issues, they should be trained so that they can work properly, right? And of course, direct assistance to underprivileged uh, classes, where the marginalization is very, it's too much, right? Where they need assistance immediately. So for them, all kinds of assistance should be directly given. Okay, so that was done. Now for that, the first thing that was done was, I told you that from 1975 to 1985, it was declared as the decade of for women, okay, by UN. Now, the convention initially that started for gender development, it started from somewhere around 1949. The Second World War ended around 1945, after which the UN came into existence. Immediately after coming into being, it started talking about women issues. So the first thing that they wanted to talk about, it was about the women's development, and that was in 1949. It was there up to 1957. So almost, a decade or so. They were actually trying uh, to figure out what the problem was, right? So initial problem they found was that how to handle the prostitution, okay, and human trafficking. Imagine कब से चल रहा है ये problem, right? So that was the first point that they wanted to discuss. They also wanted to figure out about equal pay, right? That was the time when it was realized that men and women are not getting equal pay. So that was brought into this convention, right? So all the meetings that was held between 1949 to 1957 were actually discussing these political rights to women. Initially, uh, very few nations, had given the political right to the women. Okay, something around, I think, 50 nations or so had where the women had a voting right. Today, uh, almost every country has given the right, has given that right to the women, that women are have the right to vote. But initially, only 50 countries or 51 countries where women had the right to vote. So all these things were discussed, and not just vote but also to stand for the election, so many countries were there who had given the right to women for voting, but they did not allow them to hold an office. Okay, so that was also considered. Okay, 1950. So there were like different conventions, like suppression of traffic in person and exploitation of the prostitution. It came into immediately in 1949. The ILO Convention of Equal Remuneration came in 1951. Then on Convention of Political Rights came in 1952. Okay, then we have the nationality of, the married women. Okay, 1957. Okay, so that, because there was a question that uh, if a woman marries a man from a different nation, then what is the nationality of that women? So there was again a convention made on that. Okay, so all these things were given, right? Then in by 1960 there was another convention which was against discrimination in education. Okay, so that again came into existence, and they were also like there. And what was the reason? Because it was decided that right to education, it is a basic human right of every person irrespective of the gender. Okay, and they said that if in education a discrimination taking place, that means you are actually violating a human right of the person. Okay, so that is the reason why it was important, right, that one has to insist on universalization of education, right? Then the constitution of the UNESCO, okay, uh, it actually insisted, and it collaborated with different countries as far as education is uh, concerned, and of course equal opportunity to all. Okay, so if education is properly given, everybody is allowed, then in that case it will be good for the overall development. Then in 1979, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women was, uh, a landmark convention that happened. Okay, in 1979. Okay, many countries have actually ratified it. Many countries are following it. There are a few countries, unfortunately, some Islamic countries have not accepted it, but some of the Islamic countries have accepted. The only thing is that uh, there are a few things that they insisted upon, that their religious and cultural belief, they will not compromise on that. Okay. uh, well uh, Unfortunately, the way some people are putting up the discrimination, even now, is something which is very unfortunate. But as I said, well, not all countries will agree, and you cannot really force any country. You can only try and convince the countries, but it is there. So there were certain problems also. Some people have said that the way CEDAW, okay, we call it CEDAW, Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination. They said that it is important to understand that CEDAW should not highlight the sex role, or the stereotype roles for sex, because CEDAW also spoke about the Mother's Day, uh, the Mother's Award, that kind of a thing. If you are propagating those things, that means you are actually uh, promoting the concept that women's main role is that of mother. Okay, so that is where it was like some countries had an objection. Okay, then CEDAW said that when it comes to the discrimination against women, they also said that the discrimination should not be done for women who are sex workers. Okay. Now, this is a debate which is always very strongly done somewhere. Like, for example, when we say that women can take a decision about how they will use their body. Okay. On the other hand, we also say that if a woman chooses to be a sex worker, then you know it is her choice, right? But the problem is that more than a choice, sometimes it is forced on them, right? So when something is forced on them, that means it is a kind of a discrimination that is being done, right? But if we are supporting it, then is it the right thing to support uh, a job of prostitution? Okay, so that had put a question mark. Okay, and it is still not really a solution has not been found, except that giving them the title of sex worker. There are a lot of things that are being done. Many of the NGOs, they are working in the red light areas. They are trying to think talk about the health issues, right? We know that in this a lot of issues of problems of HIV AIDS uh, are in prominence. Okay, so how it can be handled. So all these things are being done. The government is also doing it, but then again, that puts a question mark whether it should be done, or it should be something else should be done. So these are the things that are happening. Then um, another thing came in 1993, that was Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women. Okay, it was an urgent need of universal application, because violence against women was it is still very high, and it has been there from time immemorial, right? We nowadays come to know more about it because more women are opening up about it, right? They are going and registering a complaint. Okay. Even now many are not doing it, but then more are doing it, and that's the reason probably the gravity of the situation is now more in front of us. But then it has always been there, not just in India, all over the country, the Asian countries, the African nations, even in the Western world. Okay, the violence against women was something which was very strongly put forward to. And with the help of violence against women convention, we are also able to strengthen the CEDAW. Okay, because that also, discrimination against women is also something very similar. Okay, a lot of things were done. In 94, the Commission of Human Rights adopted a resolution, and for the first time a special reporter was uh, appointed, and she was an Indian. She was responsible to get in touch with all the different kinds of NGOs who are working in the lines of women and discrimination against women and all, and uh, to collect data, to analyze, to find out as to which are the areas that need to be considered, and which are the that need immediate attention. So many human rights organization, they have joined together, and in on the global platform they started talking about it. Okay, so gender equality, the international platform, right? As I told you, four world conferences, conventions were held. Okay, by the United Nations, and all these four conferences are very important. When you study, please go through all the four convention I mean all the four conferences. Okay, because there are a lot of questions also that come from this, and this is also very, very important. Okay, when you're talking about gender rights, when you're talking about uh, gender issues, these are the conferences that play a very important that had played a very important role. Okay, so the first conference that was held was in 1975. It was in the Mexico City. Okay, and this was also the year when the Decade of Women was declared from 1975 to 1985. Right. So this was a first platform where a worldwide dialogue had taken place. Okay, people from all over the country, representatives from all over the country, rather, they were there, and they were talking about the equality process. They were talking about women's issues. So this was the first time when these things happen, right? uh, a lot of attention, it was thought that it is important, and it was decided that a lot of focus has to be there. There was a need of to develop uh, certain very important goals, and fix up certain goals, so that we can achieve uh, the gender equality. So there were mainly three objectives. Okay, three very key objectives. One was full gender equality and elimination of gender discrimination. Right. So that is the first thing. Next point was again integration and full participation of women uh, in development. Okay, so that was the second goal. And the third goal was increased contribution by women in strengthening world peace. Okay, so because whenever there is a war, I told you earlier also, I guess, war and man-made calamities, they usually have a very strong impact on women. So women would always want peace, and that is the reason, because that way everything moves in a proper way. And I mean, actually peace is something which everybody looks for, but that is why they said that it is important that the role of women can be strengthened for the world peace. Okay, so that conference was held there, and it adopted a world plan of action. Okay, now what was the plan of action? It was like that, in the next 10 years, every country should try and focus on bringing the gender issues in front, right? They should set their independent goals, right? And more education and employment opportunities should be put forward. Okay, so the conference actually called upon the governments to follow to formulate the national strategies. Okay, strategies and identify the target and the priorities. Okay, as to which are the areas that they need to work on. Right, and by the end of the 10th year, that is the International Women's Year, it was decided that in this decade of Women's Year, there should be a major change in the status of women in all the member countries. Okay, so that is how they uh, uh, started working. A number of divisions, came into existence. This There is which is, one is known as UN Fem. Okay, it was the United Fund for Women. Then there was this International Research and Training Institute. Okay, for advancement of women, that came into existence. Lot of NGOs were asked to work and collect information and data. Okay, so this conference actually brought the women and men, from different countries, different backgrounds. Okay, on the same platform. All right, and so that they can actually discuss and bring about uh, the problems, okay, that are being faced. All right, though it was also realized that the people from the east, they were more concerned about the war and the peace. Okay, as to how war can be stopped and peace can be restored. Right, the west were talking about primarily on equality. Okay, on the other hand, when the south part of the world is concerned, they women from south were concerned, they were talking about development. So these were the three different areas, where the east, west, and the south talked about the different uh, aspects. Now, the reason was very simple. They were doing this because that is what they were facing in their own areas. Okay, so that was one thing. The second World Conference was in 1980. Okay, it was in Copenhagen. Right, so 145 member states, they met in Copenhagen in this particular year. Okay, primarily they wanted to review, first of all, as to what happened to the world plan of action. Okay, in 1975, when they had planned that action. Right, so they were trying to find out whether there some countries have been able to make some good change or not. Now, the Convention on Elimination of uh, all forms of discrimination against women, CEDAW, was made in 1979. So before this 1980 conference, this was a big achievement. Okay, achievement that there was the the CEDAW has been signed, and a lot of countries were ready to accept it, and they had signed it. Okay, so that was one great achievement. And the Mexico City conference, when equal they were like the equal access to education, employment opportunities, and adequate health services, they this was to be focused upon. Right, and the Hagen conference took place, and they said that some of the improvements were there, but unfortunately, in the 5 years, much improvement was not uh, seen. Now, what was the reason? So, what were the factors that were responsible that the development did not happen the way it should have happened, concerning women? So, there was like the lack of, sufficient involvement of men in improving women's role in the society. I told you that this is where the concept of gender also came into existence, because women's development, I always keep saying, women's development cannot happen in isolation. Okay, men and women are working together, and therefore the development of one is dependent on the contribution of the other, and it is on both ways. Whether it is men's development, he cannot develop alone. Similarly, women cannot develop alone, so it has to be done together. So it was realized that uh, involvement of men was less. Then insufficient political will was also one of the reasons. Then lack of recognition of the value of women's contribution to the society. As I said, many women's contribution goes unnoticed, isn't it? It becomes invisible, right? And that is the reason their contribution sometimes does not get the value that it should. Okay, so that is one uh, point where focus needs to be done. Then lack of attention to the particular needs in the women, of women in planning, right? Most of the countries were at that time planning without focusing on the specific needs of women, right? So gender blind planning will not lead to development. We have to understand the difference between the two gender, right? When we always say that कोई अलग नहीं है, सब एक जैसे हैं, they are all equal, and equality and equity are two different things. Okay, we have to understand the difference between the men and the women, and their requirements, their needs, their priorities, the impact of the planning on these two, which are going to be different. If we don't understand, if we the difference, we don't accept the difference, we will not be able to make the change. Okay, and that is what had happened in planning. It was, all the planning were completely gender blind and gender neutral. They were just planning without thinking what its impact is going to be. Then shortage of women in decision making position. It was realized that women were not in the decision making position, and therefore the decisions were made by mostly the men. So obviously the women issues were not included. Okay, insufficient services to support the role of the women in national life, such as the cooperatives, the daycare center, credit facilities. The development of a women uh, must get the infrastructural support, right? And these are the support system that should be provided, and it was not sufficient. Then lack of necessary financial resources. Okay, so allocation of resources, availability of financial resources, not just for individual development schemes, but overall development also has to be it should be there. Then lack of awareness among women about the opportunities available. So women were also not aware of the various facilities that they can take, the rights that they have. Okay, so these were the factors that were identified as to why the goals of the first the Mexico conference were not fulfilled the way it could have been fulfilled. So these were the findings, or these were the results of the second world conference. And then uh, in the third world conference in 1985, the birth of global feminism came was actually happened. Okay, so this was a conference which was quite successful, because almost 15,000 representatives of non-government organization attended this particular conference. Okay, so this was the first time when it was realized that uh, all the non-government organizations who are who are actually working for women, they have sent their representatives. Okay, just a minute, I'll just switch on the light. So and that's a massive number, as you can see, right? So they came, and this conference actually was referred to, as I said, as the birth of global feminism. Okay, delegates where but at the same time, all the delegates, they were confronted with very shocking reports. Okay, because the data that was gathered by the United Nations revealed that the improvement in the status of women and effort to reduce discrimination had benefited only a very small minority of women, right? So which means that it is not uh, really being uh, you know implemented very strongly, right? Uh, in many countries, or in many areas. So that is somewhere where and that is the reason that almost a lot of United Nations uh, objectives were not really met, okay, the way it could have been, or it should have been met. Okay, so obviously the Nairobi conference, there they started talking about what mandate could be done to seek new ways to overcome the obstacles. Okay, that the decade which had passed, and the result that it should have brought, since it wasn't there. So is there any new way through which things can be done? Okay, almost 157 participating government were there, and they updated a blueprint. Okay, they started talking about as to how by the end of the century, women can be the future of the women can be changed, can be improved, right? So the basic categories that measures were identified was that constitutional and legal steps need to be taken. Equality in social participation has to be properly identified, and equality in political participation and decision making. Okay, which obviously meant that more and more people uh, uh, should be allowed to enter the political field, because that is where a lot of legislations and bills are made. More women participation would lead to more gendered vision. Okay, and then it would be easier for having a proper kind of bills and legislation that could be made, and policies and programs that can be done. So Nairobi, it was said that there will be a forward looking strategy, okay, which is going to cover a lot of areas like employment, health, no, education, social service, industry, science, communication, all the fields where the participation of women has to be increased. Okay, so giving them more opportunity. Okay, and it obviously introduced a wider approach. Then in 1995, the fourth conference was the legacy of success. It was done in Beijing. Okay, and how things have happened in the last 2 decades, starting from 1975 to 1995. Okay, as to how it has helped to improve the women's condition and their access to resources. Okay, uh, but again it was noticed that there has been some changes, definitely, but the basic structure of inequality, especially the relationship between men and women, okay, uh, that has not been very positively affected. Okay, because this relationship is a power relationship. Okay, so that power relationship somewhere has not changed much. Okay, so in many of the countries, the uh, subordination of women is still there, which was again somewhere it was thought that it is important to change that. Now, how how to bring about uh, the value of, the equal partnership between men and women. It is not about women surpassing men, this is not a competition, right? But we have to understand that there should be an equal participation of both men and women. Okay, so again, the gender perspective was there. Okay, the empowerment issue came into focus. Okay, that it is important that women should be empowered. Okay, so as I said, that when it was initially decided that more and more women should be getting an opportunity to you know for political participation. Point is that political participation means, as I said, reserving seats is not going to be political participation. It will be placing them in the political scenario. Participation will come when they are empowered enough to speak about their uh, issues, to bring about the problems in front of the house. Okay, if they are not able to do it, if they are not equipped to do it, if they are not empowered to speak out, then in that case their contribution will be zero, isn't it? So for participation, empowerment is important. Okay, the equality between men and women is important, the equality in opportunity, equality in getting education, equality in getting skilled, that is very important. Okay, so for that, focus from women to gender, okay, and men and women to be taken together was what became very important and very obvious in the Beijing, 1995 conference. Okay, so there was a fundamental, shift, a transformation that took place where these two or three things were, uh, noticed. And which are the areas, that the government and the civil societies will have to work on, is to figure out, there were 12 critical areas that were seen. One is women and poverty, then education and training for women, women and health, because their access to health, violence against women, women and armed conflict, right? We do come across situations where we know that when there is a armed conflict taking place, women are sometimes subjected to, physical and sexual violence. So that is something that needs to be uh, really highlighted. Then women and economy, as to how much they are able to contribute and how their contribution is being taken into consideration. Women in power and decision making, how much they are able to uh, have those, powerful places where they can, and positions where they can affect the decision making process. Institutional mechanism for advancement of women, the various institutions, the government, the legal, the just the law, every the yeah the civil societies, how they can help in advancement of women. Human rights of women were also to be considered. Women and the media, how media affects the women and how women affects the media, that needs to be considered. Women and environment, women is very closely connected to environment, so how they are affected when the environment degradation take place, and how they can contribute to enhancement of the environment. And then finally the girl child. Okay, so these were 12 critical areas which were uh, you know uh, which were, kind of stated out, and where the government and the civil societies needs to work. So by adopting the Beijing platform of action, the government committed themselves to the effective inclusion of gender dimensions. Okay, so this is also when the government realized also that this has to be taken care of. Okay, so the this is the one thing. Then UN General Assembly review was done in the year 2000, right? We are talking about the international conventions, as to how on an international platform, which are the thing, places where women were considered, right? So the General Assembly was called. Okay, this was a special session, and women 2000 gender equality development peace for the 21st century. This was given the topic. Okay, and a lot of you know discussions were happened. A lot of uh, lot of things came into uh, in front, that finally, yes, a lot of beneficiaries, I mean benefits were being given to women, and women are able to take, are able to access, areas such as health, education, and environment. But it was also noticed that there is a lack of, yes, still there is a lack of awareness among women about the opportunities. The World Health Organization also were very concerned about AIDS. Okay, this was also the time when AIDS also was highlighted very strongly. Then the Population Fund, also was like talking about the world aid, about how the population is being affected. Various you know uh, various partners of women partners, or rather various branches of women also of UN also talked about, like the UNIFEM, then the United Nations Development and Planning Organization, that is UNDP. They also started suggesting various ways through which it can be done. Funds and technical assistance were specially given from International Fund and Agriculture Development. World Bank also started talking about how they have been able to fund a lot of things. So these were done, and it was also realized that the life expectancy of women in the developing countries were increasing. Fertility rate has gone down. Okay, then combined female enrollment in primary school and secondary education have also increased dramatically. Okay, and the number of women in policy making position has also gone up. So the 2000 scenario was slightly better. Okay, then there were conventions and various other convention and conferences. There was like International Conference on Population Development. Then there was like Millennium Development Goal. So in 2000, the United Nations Millennium Declaration was there, and in New York, and then there were Millennium Development Goals that were fixed. Okay, this also is a very very important area of study. Okay, there were 8 goals that were fixed. Okay, now 8 goal was to eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. Okay, so that was the first goal. Then achieve universal primary education was the second. Then promote gender equality and empower women. Okay, reduce child mortality. All right, improve mental health, combat HIV and AIDS, malaria, and other diseases. In many of the South Asian countries, malaria was a very, is like, you know, very, and especially in the rainforest and all, malaria is almost like an epidemic, right? So that has to be, from that, people have to be saved. Ensure environmental stability. Okay, and then finally develop a global partnership for development. Okay, so these were the 8 millennium goals that were set up. Okay, so achievement, there were like, as to how it has to be achieved, there were a lot of talks about it. We are still into it. We are still trying to achieve it. So that is the situation. The second unit here is about education. Yeah, education, development goals, and upgradation of skill. Now, if the women uh, are to be are developed if they have to come out of their poverty. There's one thing that is very important, and that is education and skill. We know that education is a very, very important investment in human resource, right? And it is something which always gives you a very good positive uh, yield or a positive return, right? So education needs to be focused on, right? And education always results in equity and equality. Okay, it should be promoted, and it helps in reducing discrimination. Okay, all the structural changes that can happen with the help of education, it can be very easily handled. Okay. uh, Unfortunately, 30% of the world's total illiterate population, out of it, India, I mean, if I'm talking about India, accounts for almost 30% of the world's total illiterate population. Uh, and it is about, out of which 70%, uh, you know, of the illiterate are women. Okay. So the reason is very simple. As I said, that ours is a huge population, right? A lot of people in our country, quite a good percentage of the people of our country are below the poverty line. Okay. And therefore, when it comes to the children's education, a lot of compromises are made. Okay. uh, on the other hand, it is also that quality education, or the access to good education or quality education, is also not available, okay, in many areas. I won't say that things have not changed, things have changed, but still there are places, especially in Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Odisha. Okay, in these areas it has been seen that there is a big gap between the number of children getting enrolled in the primary education. Okay, as far as the gap between the girl and the boy child. Okay, so that gap is always there. Also, as I told you once we were discussing, that there is also a huge dropout rate. Okay, so the dropout is generally is of the for the girl child. Okay, the moment there is a small child at home, the girl child will be asked to come and take care of the the younger brother or sister, because the mother and the father, they are both going out for their daily work. Maybe they are the daily wage workers, and they are living in a slum area, or they are living in a small some house. And who will take care of the younger children? So then immediately the girl child, who is probably going to the school, will be taken out of the school and set there. And in many of the places, there are the schools are also not there. Okay, India is a country where education has always been played an important role. We have a long historical background when it comes to, and a very rich background, isn't it, of Gurukul system and all that. But Gurukul system initially was also for the elite people, if you understand, right? For the Rajas and Maharajas, and their children used to go for Gurukul, right? The common man's or the common people's education was very different. Okay, so uh, at- when the current education system, we all know it is a uh, it is based on the British system of education, isn't it? So, so we have school education, which is actually a state policy. We have the higher education, which is primarily the central government's policy. Okay, uh, but both the center and the state, they can formulate their policies. Okay, their education uh, uh, system, right? There were a lot of a lot of commissions that were set, and there was a major committee, which was the Kothari Commission on Education Reform, 1964 to 1966, where uh, there were a lot of recommendations by them. Okay, like setting up of state boards, which was obviously which had happened, right? Then a leveling of institution as far as equality is concerned. Okay, so proper education standard should be there. Setting of statutory school education commission. Then co-education was emphasized as a long-term solution for equality of opportunity. Okay, so it was important that the children should be educated together, right? And that also will lead to having an equality among themselves. Okay, not just as the opportunity, the equal opportunity for both the male child and the female child, but also among themselves there will be a better association and a better understanding. So this was also important. Education always should be used as, just a second. It is, yeah, Nalini, you are asking something, no? You are asking what is the meaning of statutory. It is a,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, it's basically a permitted, you know, a required condition. Okay, it has to be there. Okay, so that is like the statutory board. Okay, so it a compulsory kind of a board. Okay, that is what is known as, a legal binding, a statutory, a permitted concept. Okay, right. So that was set up. And anyway, education, they said that it is also an agent for a basic change in the status of women, right? It has been always observed that if a woman is educated, then the way that she performs, not just in the offices or in the company where she is working, or the business she is undertaking, she always contributes a lot to the family also. Okay, her children are going to be more healthy, because she understands the importance of health, right? She would know what to do if the child is sick. Okay, will probably go to the doctor rather than going to some oja, because she's aware of it. Then she will be more concerned about the nutrition. Okay, her children will not be malnourished. Okay, they will have a particular kind of nutrition. There will be a cleanliness in the house. Okay, there will be a sanitation, proper sanitation. She will talk about having the basic facilities that are important for a house. Okay, so all these kinds of things, overall health of the family, the children, she will also make sure that her children are also educated. Okay, so that gives a better, not just the current situation will be better, but also the future will be better. Now in India, a lot of work has been done for the education opportunity. And there were a lot of programs that have started. You must have heard about a few also, like the Sarv Siksha Abhiyan. Okay, then direct primary education program. Okay, uh, then there were this special intervention for female literacy. Okay, came in 2001. And some districts were identified where some special intervention was made. Okay, then national program for education of girls at elementary level. Then Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalay. Okay, So they were actually, meant mainly for the rural girls belonging to the deprived social background, and residential facility was provided in this case. They can they were actually, class 5th and beyond, and the children were allowed to stay. They were actually in a hostel, and they were getting education there. Then condensed course of education of women, right, in the slum areas. So lot of things were done, right. But there are certain barriers to education. First and foremost, there is a mental block. Okay, mental block of uh, the parents or the adults who are not very sure about how good the women are going to be in education. Okay, so because women are always considered as lesser, in capability, therefore they are not very sure पढ़ा के क्या होगा, that kind of a dialogue. And what is the use? So what are they going to do in future? They are only going to cook, so it is, and take care of the family, so they can learn that at home rather than going in a school. So that kind of a mental block still exists. Okay, as I keep saying, lot has changed, but it is still there. Then parental aspirations and attitude. Sometimes parents, many parents, I'm not talking about all, many parents feel that girls are uh, their education can be limited. Boys, they are going to earn for the family, they are going to take care of their family. So it is always important that they should have education, technical education, all that kind of thing. Girls, they can go for some other kind of education, right. So कुछ ऐसा ले लो जो आपके घर के काम में आए, that kind of a feeling. So when that kind of an aspirations, and their aspirations for boys are much more than their aspiration from girls, right. So if that is the kind of attitude parents have, there the children will find it difficult, the girl child will find it difficult to get educated. Okay, yes, again, as I said, things have been changing, and I'm very happy that a lot of things have changed. Then poverty is another problem, right. In poor families, again, if you have to choose between whom to give the education, it will be the boys who will take the lead, and the girls will be asked to uh, leave the school. Then inadequate school facilities, that is another problem, right. There's a lot of barrier, classrooms in villages and all, the classrooms are in a very bad condition, toilets are not there, and half of the places furniture is not there. So because of the environment, because of the kind of facilities, teachers are not there, most importantly. Okay, so I mean, there is a small building, there is nothing else there, and that is known as a school. But then the point is that if no teacher are there, then what are the students going to learn? So in many of the villages, many of the remote areas, this is a problem, right. Then shortage of female teacher. Many places, in many of the conservative families, we still have the problem of not allowing the boys and the girls to be taught together, right, and the girls to be taught only by the female teacher. Unfortunately, shortage of female teacher makes it impossible for those girls who could have got the education if there has been a female teacher, they fail to get it. Okay, so that again creates a blockage. Then we also have gender bias curriculum. In curriculum also, you will see that even in your smaller in the books of kg1, kg2, or rather in class 1, I had seen this, like uh, श्याम क्रिकेट खेल रहा है, one sentence. Okay, then uh, राधा मम्मी के साथ बाजार गई है, अनदर सेंटेंस, यू नो, या मम्मी राधा गुड़िया के साथ खेल रही है, यू नो, श्याम क्रिकेट खेल रहा है एंड राधा इज प्लेइंग विद गुड़िया, यू नो, डॉल. तो ये, दिस इज अ डिफरेंस, यू नो, दैट जेंडर बायस. Okay. Yes, it's a stereotype, gender bias, where, you know, you assign role right at the beginning. You know, the child who is in class 1 knows that if I am Radha, I am supposed to go to the market only with my mother. You know, I am supposed to bring water to my, you know, to the guest who has come. पापा आए हैं ऑफिस से, जाओ बेटा पानी लेके आओ. नो, द बॉय विल नॉट बी आस्क्ड टू गो, द गर्ल विल बी आस्क्ड टू गो. And in books also the same thing is happening. Okay, so there is always this gender bias curriculum, you know, where men are supposed to do big work and women are supposed to do household work, right? Then vulnerability of the adolescent girls. When the girl is in adolescent state, we all know that, you know, there are certain physical changes that happen, and sometimes if the school is not very nearby, then it becomes a problem for the girls to go there, right? Mothers also find it unsafe for the girl to go to a longer, you know, play, longer distance, to cover a longer distance for the school. So because of that safety purpose and all, sometimes many young girls are not allowed to go to the school because the school is not nearby. Okay, or, you know, it is a co-ed school and mothers or parents are not very uh, confident or not very happy about sending them there. So that is the these are the issues. Now in the development goals also, millennium development goal, we are trying to you know, achieve universal primary education, right, and gender equality and empowerment of women. Now these are the two important goals that can only be achieved when you allow the, you know, women also to get equal access to education, right? So that is there. There were certain development goals for India also. For the purpose of education is to fulfill educational aspirations of the people, to eradicate literacy altogether, okay, to focus on vocational training and education at secondary level, right? It was very important because in our country, because of the poverty, everybody cannot go for higher education, but a vocational education or a technical education at a even at a secondary level will help them to become independent. Okay, so just theoretical knowledge is not going to help them. So we have to mix education with vocational and technical education as well, if we want that people should go for education, right? Quality and relevance of higher education is also very important. Then to bring about equity in education by gender, caste, economic group, and reducing all these disparities of all kind. Okay, so irrespective of caste, class, creed, economic background, everybody should be educated and they should actually be educated together. Okay, so that is very very important. All right, so these are the things, and then we come to the strategy towards bringing uh, gender equity. Now what are the strategies? Obviously concentration on resources, right? Education budget must be properly made, and a special budget for education should be allocated for the education of women. Okay, the quality of school, uh, and the efficiency of school, you know, what kind of teachers are there, that has to be taken care of, right? If you don't do it, then you won't get quality output, okay, from school. Then focus on inhibiting factors, you know, what are the local issues, why a particular area is behind as compared to the other area. When we see that illiteracy rate in Bihar is more, we have to identify the reason, what is the local reason for it. Okay, right? So that has to be identified. Okay, and then accordingly the technical and administrative and political, you know, changes need to be uh, done. Then alternative delivery system. Okay, if we find that one way of education is not working, then we have to find out the other way of education. Voluntary schools by NGO, you know open schools, which are actually very important, right? There was a time when, I mean, okay, there is something which is known as formal education, right? It is for those people who are able to get into KG1, come out at 12, take a decision what they will do in graduation, then go for post graduation. Yes, Nalini? Nalini,
Ma'am,
what?
each one teach one will also come as alternative methods.
Yes, it can. It can come as an alternative method that, if you have one to one, anybody who can help educating a person, isn't it? So
Okay.
yes, that is also possible, right? But alternative education system also becomes not exactly the formal ki aapko CBSE के अंडर ही जाना है, या फिर ICSE बोर्ड के अंदर जाना है. No, but then are there any other ways of educating people, right? Okay, so if there are some schools which are by an NGO, right? Now there are a group of people in a particular area, children in particular area, and they are not studying at all. So what the NGO can do is that they can organize something for the children, put them together, and start giving them the basics of education and all that, and slowly imbibe them maybe in future. Okay, so that is another way of educating people. Now, the learning centers for children for migrant laborers are constantly moving away from one place to another. Their children are unable to uh, they are not fixed in one area, so obviously the moment they leave, their children also have to, if they get registered in the nearby government school, uh, the moment they move out, they have to the school, they will have to leave the school, right? Then when they go to the next place, whichever place, are they able to get admission immediately? If the school are very strictly following some black and white rules, then they will say that no, you have left in the middle of the session, so we can't now take you in the middle of the session, hum admission nahi denge, you have to wait for another year, then only you will get admission. So there, finally, there is a break, and the willingness also to go to the school might actually uh, just disappear. So some something some informal conditions can also be created. Okay, nowadays open schools are very becoming very popular, right? And there is, what is the harm in that? All of you are studying from an open university, isn't it? You are able to do your work, you are able to enhance your education as well, right? So good quality schools and open schools and voluntary schools are the requirement of a country like India, not just because we have these kind of people more, but we also have to understand we have a huge population. Okay, and to cater to that, we need more and more opportunities for them. Okay, then uh, the quality improvement, it is also very important to have a quality education, right? And for that you need to have quality teachers. Okay, now coming to upgradation of skill, right? Education has happened. Now one has to also think about developing the skill. It is important that for an economic development of any country, the the workforce of that country must be skilled. Okay, education can give you a base, but skill is something else, isn't it? It is about the vocational skill, what you are able to do. Okay, there are sometimes if skill can also make you your own, can make you a self-employed person as well, right? So the skill development is also very important. Again, for a country which has a huge population, it is important to have more job opportunities, right? So job opportunities, or rather income generation opportunity. जॉब अपॉर्चुनिटी इज समथिंग वेयर आप किसी के यहाँ जाके काम करते हो, राइट? आप किसी कंपनी में काम करते हो, सेल्फ एम्प्लॉयमेंट, योर इन जनरेटिंग योर ओन इनकम. नाउ फॉर दैट द स्किल डेवलपमेंट is important, right? So there are a lot of strategies, skill development policy, skill development mission, prime minister skill development council, all these things are there. Skill development corporation is there, vocational education, all these support system are available. Okay, and that is primarily to help the skill, okay, the development of skill, right? So we have finished 2 units of it. We will continue with the third unit in our next class, right? And we will see if we can start another other point topic also. Okay, right? So this is what we are going today. Okay, things are fine. You are able to do it. Have you started your, writing your? Nalini is laughing.
Ma'am, I started finding points or the topics from where I have to take the material, but
Okay.
still haven't started writing, to be honest.
Okay, okay. Yeah, first make a structure, okay, as to
Exactly.
what you are going to write. And, in a question, just see what you want to include in that question. Okay, if there is a, like any question, I mean, I haven't seen your, this one, I mean, your assignments, but whatever the question is, like, you first try and understand as to what are those things that you are going to include. Because I have seen sometimes, uh, when I evaluate the answer sheets, people write everything that they know in one answer. You don't have to do that. Okay, be very specific, right? Whatever
Ma'am,
is
is that
asked.
university concept? Fill the number of pages and you'll get marks. That's a general perception. Here
No,
in
no, no,
UP, I've
no,
seen that.
no, no, don't do that. Number of, we are not going to weigh your answer sheet and give you the number, right? So don't try to make it as thick as possible. No, right? Right? What is being asked, isn't it? So it is obvious. So when you do your assignment, also just understand what is being asked in the question, accordingly figure out the points. And like if there are certain, like for example, some characteristics, of anything, right? So try and explain it a little bit. Okay, right. So you just write the heading of topic, and then explain it in your own words. So for
Yes, ma'am.
that, study what is there written in your answer in your book, and then accordingly explain it according to your understanding.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, right? So that
Yes, ma'am.
way you can do it. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Have a happy weekend.
Yeah, you also have a happy weekend. Here we are extremely, it is very cold uh, here.
Ma'am, you
And
are also in Bangalore.
no, 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 I am in Noida.
Acha,
And
then of course.
yeah, so it's very
Because
cold.
otherwise, except me and Anisha and now you, everybody is from Bangalore.
Yeah, a lot of people are from Bangalore here, and I was just thinking, Shisha is just, I think, wearing a t-shirt or something, and here we are like just putting on, one sweater, and if possible, we can put up another one also, because today there was not, I, I haven't seen the sun today the whole day,
And
not a
today, same
speck
here,
of.
ma'am. In Lucknow also, there
Yeah,
was no sun.
yeah.
Thankfully, I love winters, so I don't mind. I love winters.
No, no,
So I
I love
hate
winters. That's
summers.
not a problem. Loving winter, I have not no issues at all. I love winters. I don't like summers. But then the point
Exactly.
is that
Yeah,
the
carrying so many sweaters is really,
yeah,
that's one reason. Again, I don't like winters. How many to wear? Means how much you can wear.
yeah, that is it. When the winter is nice, but then there should be a limit to the drop of the temperature, no?
Yes.
So
And
that is,
Noida is colder than Lucknow.
yeah,
Noida is colder than Lucknow.
it is colder. Yeah. So anyway, so that is how it is. So have a good, nice weekend, all of you, and
Yeah.
I'll be seeing you on Monday. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Right?
Okay. Yes.
Okay, right, Shisha. Thank
Thank
you. Bye,
you.
Nalini.
Yeah.
Bye,
Bye.
Shisha. Thank you.
Bye.
Take
Good
care.
night.
Bye.
Yeah. Take care. You too take care now.